Welcome to the Ascension Alchemists podcast, everyone, where we're here as a community to align with God and express the fullest version of ourselves. Hello, my name is Michael Abramson, and I'm so excited that you are joining me today as I just got back from Florida on a 4-week powerful journey. I just wanted to ask all of you, have you ever had that moment right before you plan something huge that all of a sudden Mr. Doubt, Mr. Insecurity, or Mrs. Insecurity, and all of these limitations start to pop up the minute you're on your way to serve something that your heart feels guided to? For this past weekend was such an incredible experience of facilitating 3 back-to-back events where I was so honored to come back to our community of Sarasota, in which I planned this amazing golden light meditation activation, followed by a day of master transformational healings in person, followed by an incredible men's circle. And what was so interesting about this event was it was the first time going back by myself in which I was just extremely excited and filled with such passion. Yet, as the days and weeks were coming up, I noticed how filled up my schedule was with all the events and responsibilities I had here in Maryland. And somewhere right beforehand, there was that little voice in my head that was just starting to bring forth questions. And what was interesting is even as the passion was rising, even as the excitement on the plane down to Florida, I could start to feel this limitation of whether it was not feeling fully capable, not feeling fully able, because maybe I didn't have enough sleep, or there wasn't enough planning, or I didn't have the right marketing material because I was just so jones to dive into what I was doing that there were pieces that I didn't fully take advantage of in the preparation. And I'd like to ask if you've noticed when doing something for the first time, and I've done teaching many times, and I've done men's circles, but I've never done it back to back to back and flown into a place where I started immediately. Have you ever noticed what arises within you, that old limitation, that old self that wants to just bring its awareness and that choice if you're going to give that attention to? For it was interesting because I woke up really early to fly out of DCA into Florida. And at first, I didn't realize how early my flight was because I was just so thrilled and delighted to come back to Florida, especially during this time where it was quite chilly. And when I saw the flight was at 5 a.m., I was like, wow, I actually got to wake up at 2:45 or 2:30 because the airport's about an hour away, or 45 minutes. I have to be there an hour ahead. So it started to start this excitement, anxiousness, and this ability to say, am I doing this? Because usually I like to have a day before so I can rest, but somewhere I was like, I got this. And so with just a couple hours sleep, I flew into Florida and I had this energy that started to build and build. Yet there was that old voice in the head that started coming back and saying, did you give yourself enough time to prepare? Did you have the ability to really market and bring people? Are people going to show up? I'm sure all of you have had that before where you plan something last minute. I did this within 2 weeks. Usually I like to give myself a month or longer. Are people going to actually show up? And then of course those buried wounds of fear of failure, fear of not getting it right, start to arise even deeper of saying, oh my gosh, what happens if no one shows up? 1, 2, or 3? And I found it just interesting to, instead of just act and respond to that, but just watch it. And that's where I like to ask that moment of revelation where all of a sudden you're not jumping back to the old self, you're just aware of what's coming up. And so, though I didn't have that much sleep, I started to allow this greater joy and happiness to really rise above some of these doubts, some of these concerns, old insecurities I've had in the past of preparation time. If anyone knows me well, there's this student in me that really likes to dot my I's and cross my T's. Yet when something is rushed, that pressure starts to rise up. And as that pressure rises up, it was so interesting to see as the excitement and joy was rising up, so were some of these old insecurities. So as I landed in Florida, I put the windows down. I felt the warm weather. The only thing, it was raining. It was raining all day, so it didn't allow me to get to the beach and ground. Yet when I got to the house I was staying at, I sat in the lanai and I just closed my eyes and placed my hands over my heart. And that's why I just really reconfirmed that with God, anything is possible. And it was so interesting because as I was placing my hands over my heart and just thanking the gratitude of the opportunity to see dear friends of our community, to be of highest healing service, the sun started to break through the clouds. And how interesting it was to note, the higher I started to raise my vibration in gratitude and appreciation, the lighter the sky became with the sun, and the more I started to shift out of insecurity, or what I really saw as tiredness and vulnerability that allowed some of these limitations to move through. Before I started this, I thought it'd be wonderful if 10 would come, 12 would come, because it was a rather small setting. It wasn't a large auditorium. I was just happy to present in front of a small few select. Yet, in the joy and happiness of what was created, over 17 people showed up in a small little room, great room, incredible facility. Thank you, Jonathan Pittman, called Joy Connection, that allowed me to present what I saw one of my greatest meditations. And what was so interesting was each and every hour getting closer to it, I could feel the pressure and the stress of, was I able and prepared enough to do it? All those not enoughs started to rise to the surface. And have you recognized it? Have you seen that when really trying to do something with all your heart, yet sometimes when we may be in a state where in travel, maybe a lack of sleep, or an ability where we're not fully grounded, which thank gosh I gave that opportunity several hours before the event to ground so that when I presented it, it came out amazing. And then the next day, coming back to do some private healing sessions, it was so interesting to notice that voice started to get smaller and smaller, because what I recognized was within me, within us, there is a natural sense that when we give permission to remember what we're so excited and joyful to share, it starts to automatically come through us. Yet have you ever noticed when we overthink it, or we start to allow our mental body to perceive things in a way that it's just overthinking, dwelling, questioning, that it starts to stir a whole different vibration of energy? And so it was such a great lesson within the first 2 days, because as I shared this, each time it came up, I was like, okay, there's the old self. There's the limitation. What do I have right now that I can do? And immediately I would come back to my breath, and I would just take a replenishing breath in and just give myself the acknowledgement and the joy that I'm here doing it. And that never in my life have I facilitated 3 back-to-back events in a short period of time that would elicit new responses. Responses from the nervous system, responses how to do everything by myself, whether it was marketing, email, calls. And yet I kept coming back to ground myself, especially on the second day where I went straight to the beach and I just placed my feet in the sand. knowing that I had one event left with the men's circle. And it felt like this momentum was starting to build. And what I recognized was, as that momentum was starting to build, I started to feel myself rise in strength, rise in this inner power that it was like I was a conduit and it was automatically moving through me. Yet how interesting, in those nights that I was in Florida, I was so excited that I had a hard time sleeping because I would wake up in the middle of the night and my mental body once again would overthink. What would I present? How would I share it? And I'd wake up maybe with 5 hours of sleep. But yet once again, I would breathe back into my heart, connect to God, and just give myself that replenishing breath that it's going to come out just as perfect as it is, because there's that passion, joy, happiness that I want to present it with all my love. So after the second event, right before the men's circle, once again, that little voice started coming up. What do you want to present? Because I don't know if you've ever seen, excitement is great, but overexcitement can actually make you a little stressed because the mind's moving so fast that it's like, oh, I could present this. I could share this topic. Oh, what do the men really need to hear now? And it's almost like this, like taking maybe like a carbonated drink and shaking it up, where all of a sudden there's this pressure that builds up because there's so much that wants to be opened, but you don't want to like spray everyone so that they're like seeing that it's like an overexertion of energy that may come out and surprise them and just overwhelm them. Because I knew within myself, I had an hour and a half, and not having done the men's circle since the summer, it was an opportunity that there was ideas shooting left and right. The reason I share this is because I feel many of us go through these situations, new opportunities, new experiences, and when we go through this, we may never know how it's going to be. That's the learning process. It's okay if there's these bumps along the way. If there's these moments where you feel like, well, I could have included this. I forgot to do this. That's part of the journey. What happens when we jump into something we've never done? Each and every step is like a post sign, giving yourself the opportunity to say, wow, that went great. Well, I could have refined this area. Oh, I could have sent out emails earlier. Maybe I didn't have to do last minute marketing. Maybe I could just trust and have faith that was already going to happen. And those two keys, I feel, were the basis of what came through me, because the more I started to just step back and breathe, and most important, believe in myself through the joy of what wanted to come through, because I recognized, which was interesting, facilitating these events and joy connection, that this joy automatically wanted to bring forth my passion into motion. And have you noticed when you're joyful about something and you're filled with all your heart of how you want to present an area of your life that you really enjoy, whether it's an art, whether it's a class, whether it's a service, that joy brings forth what I feel all of our inner talents, our inner gifts automatically that somehow bypass the mental body, because that joy is coming from the heart. Yet I had to use the muscle of believing in myself, trusting that it was going to go exactly as it's planned, and having faith whoever is supposed to be there will be there. And it's not about how many, not about the numbers. It's about the experience that's being displayed. And it really helped me give myself greater ability and capability just to allow. Because sometimes we resist so many areas within us that we're unaware of. These old patterns, these old habits, these ways that somehow right before the event starts becomes that little jitter factor, or maybe that little anxiousness of what could possibly go wrong. Or, of course, coming down and looking at the weather and seeing the rain, how it shifted my grounding technique into the ocean, yet I found a nice dry awning and connected to the sun. Yet somewhere it allowed me to come back to what I feel is our God-given nature. And that God-given nature is everything and anything becomes possible when we truly align with God. When we allow ourselves to know that with God, we are able to move mountains. With God, we are able to move beyond the human limitation and move into our greater, higher, divine nature. And that was what I did. Yet, it became a practice of once again coming back to that trust, opening the door and remaining in faith. And most important, continually to believe that this was a call that I've been putting out. And now that I'm receiving that and doing it, to continually to believe that that call that was within myself was naturally running through me. So all I had to do was follow that call, show up in that call, and utilize these keys so that it allowed it to move through me. If you ever look at an amazing actor or an athlete or a professional that has a gift, that moves through them in such an authentic, transparent way where before you know it, it's living through them versus them merely acting it. And that's where I like to invite all of you today, where when there's a situation that arises and before you know it, there becomes this pressure, maybe old insecurities or areas that want to present itself, to remember that infinite intelligence within you wants to express itself naturally. And sometimes we just have to get out of the way. We just have to be present and be clear with what we are so that it can come through you. And when I say it, God's nature and the gift that I feel within us that wants to share our innermost talents, our gifts, our teachings, our services. And to still remember, as we raise in vibration and light, so too do sometimes these limited conditions, these old areas want to pop up too. And rather meet them in frustration or worry and anxiousness. What happens if we meet them in a whole new level of acceptance? An area that we're able to fully see it as just another way that we're experiencing it from a new lens. Sometimes I share that if you ever remember, and this will date my age, of a slinky, and you think of the rings that go in a circle when you just open it up, and each time we're evolving in life, we're raising ourselves to a higher ring or a higher circle. Yet sometimes we meet old aspects of ourselves. What happens when we're in a new state of consciousness where once again we're using greater keys such as belief, trust, and faith to move through them? For those that are interested, I taught this 4-week Master Your Health class where I utilize these 4 keys to open up the doors to our greatest health. And I have those available now. Please contact us at info@ascensionalchemist.com to learn more. Even greater, I feel, when it becomes our daily responsibility to remember the continual process of growing, expanding, and evolving. We're going to meet these limitations. We're going to meet these areas. There may be even imposter syndrome, which out of nowhere comes because I know fully of my capability. I know of my joy that wants to present this. But sometimes that human self has those moments. So what do? We bring ourselves to the present moment. And we remember there's a great God presence within us that's ready for us when we connect to it. And that's the key, connecting to it and allowing it through breath, through presence, through grounding and embodying what I feel many of us are going through now. That is why I'm putting out this special offer to a select group of men that are ready to dive into the new year. I'm creating a 6-week coaching program just for men that's going to utilize the keys within them to create the highest level of empowerment and trust, faith, and belief in attracting everything that you want for this new year as you set off into this great leap of 2026. And to me, it's such a passion to help bring what I have seen in myself of the prosperity, the joy, the abundance, and really the health of applying these keys and helping men recognize they have everything within them into coming into alignment and embodying, then we are able to do everything that our God-given nature is given to us when we fully align within ourselves. It just takes that greater awareness and that greater consciousness. So next week, I will be launching that. And for those that are interested, it's those men that are interested, it is a 6-week program that will take you to the new year. Each week, I'll be having a group call with a select, intimate group of men to help bring that higher level of empowerment so that everything that you want to create within yourself, you now have the keys, the tools, and the strategy and techniques to build that. And what I find the most monumental time of the year that initiates right at the beginning of a new cycle, a new time, and that is the new year. So please, once again, reach out to me, Michael Abramson, at info@ascensionalchemist.com, and I'd be more than happy to share this. Most important, the message is here. Whenever we move into any level of resistance, any levels where old insecurities, old habits, old patterns may arise, especially when stepping into a new experience, something that you've never done before. Remember, that is part of the journey. That is our ability to continually rise and meet those areas with compassion, with empathy, and most important, with gratitude, because each time we meet them, we're at a new level that we can easily start to shift through them. Even if it starts to throw us off and where we dwell and stress and anxiousness, that's part of the human experience. Yet, we have our divine aspects, our God-given presence that's right here ready to shift from that lower mind into that higher mind and allowing our heart to lead the way in everything that we want to serve, create, and express. And that is why today I wanted to share this journey, because looking back, it's a reflection of knowing evolution, expansion starts with contraction and then evolving and then contraction and then illuminating. It's a process that's consistently growing. It just doesn't happen overnight. It's a layer by layer process. And for each layer to enjoy, to take note, and not to get stuck within each component, because it's teaching once again how to move through it in ease and grace, and most important, in your God-given nature. So thank you today for joining, as I am super excited to present this 6-week program for the men, as well as for those that really want to dive into a 4-week journey of mastering your health, of keys that we already have, and now just unlocking that for your greatest potential and becoming the highest and healthiest version of yourself, is what I am so thankful I can present to each and every one of you. So on this day, when you go out there and you try something new, go give it the greatest level of joy and happiness, and watch what will happen when that vibration exceeds any other lower limitation as a bridge to move into your most incredible gifts that are here to be presented in this beautiful, blessed time. Thank you all for joining, and I look forward to seeing you on our next episode in Ascension Alchemy.